Aliens laugh at Earth until humans burned their worlds. Kim Sun yawned as she adjusted the telescope's settings at Seoul Observatory. It was close to midnight, and most of her colleagues had already gone home. Only the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from monitoring equipment broke the silence. She reached for her coffee mug, her third cup tonight, and took a long sip before returning to her work. The radio telescope had been picking up unusual signals for the past week. Most of her team dismissed them as random space noise or equipment malfunction, but Kim felt different. These patterns were too regular, too structured to be random. Tonight she'd stayed late to run additional analyses. "What are you trying to tell us?" she whispered to the screen, watching the wavelength patterns dance across her monitor. The coffee cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor when the pattern suddenly changed. Instead of the repetitive sequences she'd been tracking, the signal formed clear mathematical equations, first simple ones, then increasingly complex formulas. "This can't be happening," Kim muttered, her hands shaking as she pressed the emergency contact button. Within minutes, she was on a video call with Director Park. "It's 3 a.m, Dr. Kim, this better be important," Park grumbled, his hair disheveled. "Sir, you need to see this," Kim said, sharing her screen. "These aren't random signals, they're equations. Communication." Park's expression shifted from annoyed to stunned. "Are you suggesting?" "Yes, sir. I believe we're receiving a message from an intelligent non-Earth source." Within hours, the observatory buzzed with activity. Government officials arrived by helicopter, and Kim found herself explaining her findings to a room full of serious-faced people in suits. The military established a perimeter around the facility as news vans gathered at the gates. 3 days. Later, as scientists worldwide confirmed Kim's discovery, the signal changed again. This time, it included visual data, strange symbols that took another 2 days to decode into a crude form of communication. They called themselves the Nari, from a star system humans hadn't even properly cataloged yet. Their first translated message was simple: "We have watched, we will speak now." International space agencies collaborated to build a response system, sending back mathematical sequences to establish common understanding. The Nari responded with increasingly sophisticated messages, and soon the exchange included basic concepts and ideas. 1 month after first contact, screens around the world flickered as the first visual of a Nari being appeared. Tall and slender, with silvery skin and large, multifaceted eyes, the alien spoke in a voice that sounded like several people talking at once, now translated into all major human languages. "Humans of Earth, we have observed your development for many cycles. We come with knowledge." People worldwide reacted with everything from religious fervor to panic. Markets crashed, then stabilized. Religious leaders offered varying interpretations. And in those first weeks, humanity dared to hope this was the beginning of a great new chapter. But the tone soon changed. During the third official broadcast, a Nari representative named Do-Han revealed their true feelings. "Your species struggles with basic planetary management. Your technologies are crude. Your social structures inefficient. We find your attempts at civilization amusing." The insults became more specific with each communication. They mocked human reliance on fossil fuels when they had mastered clean energy. They ridiculed human medicine for still struggling with diseases the Nari had eliminated generations ago. They laughed at Earth's political divisions, showing images of human conflict alongside their own seemingly perfect society. Public opinion shifted quickly. Initial wonder turned to humiliation, then anger. Protests erupted outside newly established communication centers. Military forces worldwide went on high alert when the Nari revealed they had ships positioned throughout the solar system, watching Earth like a living museum of primitive development. At a hastily assembled United Nations session, world leaders struggled to form a unified response. Some advocated for humble learning, others for cutting communication entirely. In her small office, now located within a secure military compound, Dr. Kim watched the latest Nari transmission with growing unease. Something about their perfect society seemed off. Their cities were too orderly, their people too similar in behavior. "They're hiding something," she told Captain Lee Day, who had been assigned as military liaison to her research team. Lee nodded slowly. "No civilization is perfect. They're showing us exactly what they want us to see." Kim spent sleepless nights reviewing every piece of Nari communication. She noticed tiny inconsistencies in their backgrounds, moments when their composure slipped. During one transmission, after a power fluctuation at the receiving station, she caught a glimpse of something they hadn't intended to show, a moment of chaos in the background, quickly hidden. "They're not just watching us," Kim told Lee one evening as they pored over the footage. "They're studying us for weaknesses. This isn't a cultural exchange, it's reconnaissance." As the Nari's messages grew more condescending, a small international team formed secretly under UN authority. Their mission: look beyond the aliens' perfect facade and discover their true intentions, and what they found would change everything. The laughing aliens had no idea that their mockery would be their undoing, or that the humans they so easily dismissed were already finding the cracks in their seemingly flawless armor. The day the Nari took over Earth's communication systems started like any other. People were having breakfast, driving to work, or sleeping, depending on their time zone, when every screen suddenly flickered to life. Phones, televisions, computers, digital billboards, all displayed the same image: the silvery face of Du Han, the main Nari representative. "People of Earth," the alien began, its multi-toned voice somehow sounding both melodic and cold. "Today, we begin your education." What followed was a 3-hour broadcast that couldn't be turned off or muted. The Nari had somehow overridden all digital controls globally. People stood frozen in streets watching storefront displays. Families, huddled around television sets, and office workers stared at their monitors as the aliens systematically dismantled human accomplishments. "You celebrate landing on your moon," Dohan said, showing footage of the historic Apollo missions. "Our youngest learned to pilot spacecraft before they complete basic education. Your achievement is equivalent to a child's first steps." The ridicule was precisely calculated for maximum impact. The Nari didn't just mock humanity's technology. They targeted cultural pride points of each region, displaying intimate knowledge of human civilization. In a busy Tokyo intersection, people watched in stunned silence as the aliens criticized. "Japanese technological innovation. You believe your robotics advanced, yet your machines remain clumsy tools. Our everyday devices contain consciousness your scientists cannot begin to comprehend." In New York, crowds gathered beneath Times Square, screens as the Nari dissected American democracy. "You fight wars to spread a governmental system that fails your own people. Your elections are popularity contests while your citizens lack basic needs." No aspect of human life escaped criticism. They ridiculed art as primitive emotional expression, religious beliefs as fantasy coping mechanisms, and environmental efforts as too little, too late. The broadcast ended with Dohan's face filling screens worldwide. "We share this not to hurt, but to help you understand your place. A child cannot improve without recognizing its failings." Dr. Kim watched from the military bunker, her hands clenched into fists so tight her nails left marks on her palms. Captain Lee stood beside her, his expression unreadable. "They planned this from the beginning," Kim said quietly. "First contact was just setting the stage." The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Suicide rates spiked. Religious attendance both soared and plummeted, some seeking comfort, others abandoning faith. Schools reported children too depressed to function, having internalized the message that human achievement was meaningless. World leaders attempted reassuring addresses, but their words rang hollow after the Nari's comprehensive dismantling of human civilization. Stock markets crashed as economic confidence collapsed. Riots broke out in major cities, with some groups attacking communication infrastructure in futile attempts to prevent further broadcasts. 2 days later, the second broadcast began. This time, the Nari showed footage of Earth that couldn't possibly have been recorded from space. For 20 of your generations we have walked among you, Dohan revealed. Screens displayed Nari observers in human cities across centuries, watching the building of monuments, standing in crowds during historic speeches, observing wars from both sides. Your species was an educational project. Young Nari study your mistakes as cautionary examples. They showed classrooms on their world where alien children watched footage of human environmental disasters, failed states, and social collapses. The alien children's reactions were unmistakable. They were laughing. In the bunker, the international response team had expanded. Scientists, military strategists, and psychological warfare experts from a dozen countries now worked around the clock. Their goal had shifted from communication to defense, though, against the Nari's vastly superior technology, options seemed limited. "They're enjoying this too much," observed Professor Song, a behavioral psychologist. "There's something almost personal about their ridicule." Kim nodded slowly. "They're playing to an audience. Not just teaching their children, they're performing." "Pride," Captain Lee said suddenly. "Their weakness is pride." That night, as the world reeled from psychological assault, Kim couldn't sleep. She reviewed every frame of Nari communication, looking for anything they might have missed. Around 3 a.m., she noticed something in footage of the alien classroom. A student in the background being removed after asking a question. The Nari hadn't intended to show this. They control their own people, she realized. Their perfect society has cracks. Meanwhile, billions of humans endured daily broadcasts of ridicule. The Nari dissected human history, replaying humanity's greatest atrocities alongside everyday failures. They showed traffic jams as evidence of inefficiency, hospital waiting rooms as proof of medical inadequacy, and political debates as signs of intellectual limitation. But something unexpected began happening. As the initial shock wore off, pockets of resistance formed. Not with weapons or technology, but with humor and defiance. Street art appeared overnight depicting Nari with cartoon speech bubbles saying ridiculous things. Online memes spread showing Duhan's serious face with absurd captions. "If we're so primitive and they're so advanced," a viral video asked, "why? Are they obsessed with us?" The psychological warfare experts in the bunker noted the shift. "Humans adapt," Professor Song explained. "When the initial shock fades, we find ways to cope." Captain Lee studied reports of these small rebellions with growing interest. "They expected us to crumble completely, but we're still finding ways to laugh." On day 7 of the broadcasts, Dr. Kim made another breakthrough. Analyzing transmission patterns, she discovered the Nari weren't broadcasting from their home system as they claimed. Their ships were much closer, within Earth's solar system. They lied about their location, she told the response team. What else are they lying about? As the team dug deeper into Nari communications, they began finding more inconsistencies. The aliens portrayed their society as perfect, yet careful analysis of background details revealed automated security measures, population control methods, and rigid hierarchies. Their ridicule shows us their values, Kim realized. They mock what they fear. Captain Lee nodded slowly. And what they fear most is disorder, unpredictability. Humanity's greatest strength, Kim finished. As the 10th day of broadcasts began, the response team had identified a potential weakness. While the world continued to endure daily ridicule, in the underground bunker, a dangerous plan was taking shape, one that would turn the Nari's laughter into screams. 3 weeks. Into the daily broadcasts, the world had settled into an uneasy routine. Every morning at exactly 8 a.m. GMT, the Nari would take over screens worldwide for their 2-hour education session. People had started calling it morning mockery. Some refused to watch, covering screens or retreating to nature. Others watched obsessively, studying every detail of the alien transmissions. In the underground bunker, now codenamed Sanctuary, Dr. Kim hadn't seen daylight in days. Her small office was wallpapered with printouts of video frames, sticky notes, and scribbled theories. Empty coffee cups and food wrappers overflowed from her trash bin. She had been reviewing the same 10-second clip for hours, a moment when the camera in a Nari broadcast had briefly shown something unintended. "You need to sleep," said Captain Lee, appearing at her door with a sandwich. His own eyes were bloodshot from lack of rest. Kim shook her head. "Look at this again," she said, pointing to her screen. "During yesterday's broadcast, when they were showing their central communication hub, the clip showed a sleek room filled with Nari working at what appeared to be control stations. In the background, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, was a massive crystalline structure pulsing with light." "What am I seeing?" Lee asked, squinting. "Their network node," Kim said. "And watch what happens when there's that power fluctuation they tried to edit out." She played the clip again. For a split second, the crystal structure flickered, and several Nari in the background clutched their heads in obvious pain. "They're connected to it," Kim said, excitement breaking through her exhaustion. "Not just technologically, physically, maybe even mentally." Lee set down the sandwich and pulled up a chair. "A hive mind?" "Not exactly. More like they've integrated their technology and biology. Their communication system isn't just a network, it's part of them." This discovery led to a breakthrough. The international team began combing through all previous broadcasts, looking for similar moments of vulnerability. They found several instances where background Nari showed synchronized responses to system fluctuations, all flinching at the same moment when there were power surges or signal interruptions. Professor Song, who had been analyzing Nari psychology, called an emergency meeting 2 days later. "They're not just connected, they're dependent," she explained to the room of bleary-eyed experts. "Their ridicule of our primitive independence is projection. They mock what they fear, and they fear individuality because they've sacrificed it for efficiency." A networking specialist from India, Dr. Patel, built upon this theory. "Their technology is perfect because it's uniform. Every component follows exact protocols. No variations, no creativity, just perfect execution of predetermined functions. Like an immune system that's never been challenged," added a virologist. "Perfect in a controlled environment, but potentially vulnerable to something unexpected." Captain Lee stood by the wall map, showing all known Nari transmission points in the solar system. "If their systems are this integrated, a disruption wouldn't just be an inconvenience. It would be devastating." The team worked through the night, pulling in cryptographers, signal experts, and offensive cyber specialists from around the world. By morning, they had formulated a theory that seemed impossibly simple yet terrifyingly plausible. The Nari's technological perfection was their greatest weakness. Their systems reject chaos, Kim explained the next day to a video conference of world leaders. They've engineered randomness out of their technology, creating perfect predictability, but that means they can't adapt to true randomness, finished the president of Kenya. Like an immune system that's never encountered a new pathogen. The plan that formed was both elegant and desperate. If the team was right, the Nari systems would be vulnerable to something humans excelled at creating: unpredictable chaos. While the public-facing response to the aliens remained one of apparent defeat, behind the scenes, a global network of hackers, engineers and scientists began working on what they called Operation Noise, an attempt to introduce controlled chaos into the Nari communication system. The first test came 3 days later. During a Nari broadcast, the team introduced a microsecond burst of random data patterns into the return signal Earth was sending. The effect was immediate and telling. Duhan paused mid-sentence, blinking rapidly before continuing. In the background, several Nari technicians moved quickly to control stations. "They felt it," Kim whispered, watching from Sanctuary. Just that tiny burst of noise disrupted them, but the victory was short-lived. The next day's broadcast came with enhanced security measures. The Nari never directly acknowledged the incident, but spoke at length about primitive attempts at communication requiring correction. The team needed a better approach. They couldn't just attack the Nari system. They needed to understand it first. Captain Lee proposed a risky plan: A small team would attempt to decode the actual structure of the Nari network by analyzing the signals at their source. This required getting closer to one of the Nari transmission ships. Using stealth technology developed for deep space reconnaissance, a small international crew launched from a remote facility in the Gobi Desert. Their mission was simply to observe and record, not engage. The space mission was kept secret even from most world governments. While daily ridicule broadcasts continued, the small craft slipped through the solar system, its heat signature masked to appear as space debris. 2 tense weeks later, the reconnaissance craft returned with terabytes of data collected from close observation of a Nari relay station orbiting Jupiter. What they discovered confirmed their theories and revealed something even more significant. Their entire civilization is built on perfect symmetry and order, Kim explained to the expanded team. Their planets, all 3 of them based on the data, have been transformed into essentially giant computers. They've replaced natural systems with technological ones. The reconnaissance had captured images of the Nari homeworlds, planets covered in gleaming structures with no visible natural features remaining. Rivers had been replaced by coolant channels. Forests had given way to energy collection arrays. Weather itself appeared to be controlled by massive atmospheric processors. They turned living worlds into machines, someone whispered in horror. Perfect machines, Captain Lee said, with perfect vulnerabilities. Professor Song studied the images of the Nari worlds. They ridicule our attachment to nature, our inefficient preservation of wilderness, because they've abandoned it completely. They see our diversity as weakness because they've eliminated their own. The final piece came from Dr. Patel's network analysis. The Nari communication system operated on perfectly predictable patterns, mathematical sequences that never deviated. This perfection made their technology incredibly efficient, but utterly unprepared for true randomness. Their entire civilization is a system that cannot handle noise, Kim said. And noise is something humans excel at creating. As the team began formulating a response plan, they realized the bitter irony. The very aspects of humanity the Nari mocked, our chaotic nature, our unpredictability, our attachment to the natural world, might be the key to saving Earth. The question was no longer if they could disrupt the Nari system, but what would happen when they did. Would the aliens simply recover and retaliate? Or would the disruption cascade through their perfectly ordered civilization, causing damage beyond imagination? Either way, humanity was running out of options. The daily psychological assault was taking its toll. It was time to show the laughing aliens that Earth wasn't just a primitive backwater to be mocked. It was time to fight back. Dawn broke over the Gobi Desert facility as 30 of the world's top scientists and military strategists gathered in the underground war room. The air felt electric with tension. No one had slept much. Faces looked gaunt, determined. This wasn't just another meeting. It was perhaps humanity's last stand. Dr. Kim stood before the holographic display showing the 3 Nari homeworlds. Beautiful and terrifying in their mechanical perfection, the planets gleamed like jewels in the artificial light. Operation Sunrise begins in 6 hours, she said, her voice steady, despite having not slept in nearly 2 days. Every simulation we've run suggests we have one chance at this. If we fail, the Nari will detect our attempt and likely respond with force. Captain Lee stepped forward. Let's review the plan one final time. What they were about to attempt had never been done before. A coordinated technological assault across millions of miles of space, targeting an alien civilization far more advanced than their own. The plan had 3 components. Codenamed Dawn, Daybreak, and High Noon. Dawn Team Report, Lee called. A young woman with glasses stood up. Transmission package is ready. We've created what appears to be a standard response signal, but embedded within it is the most complex randomized data pattern ever created. It combines mathematical nonsense, contradictory codes, and elements specifically designed to trigger error correction protocols in their system. This was the virus, though not in the traditional computer sense. It was more like a puzzle that had no solution, designed to force the perfectly logical Nari systems into endless processing loops. Daybreak Team, an older man with weathered hands nodded. The fleet is prepared. 8 unmanned vessels carrying modified EMP devices. On your command, they'll emerge from hiding behind Mars moons and make what appears to be a standard approach toward the nearest Nari ship. The Nari would detect these ships easily. That was intentional. What they wouldn't detect was what the ships actually contained. High noon, a military officer stood. Global defense systems are on maximum alert. Every satellite we control has been repositioned to create a protective network around Earth. If this goes wrong, she didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew what failure meant. As final preparations continued, Dr. Kim slipped away to the small observation deck above the facility. Through the reinforced glass, she could see the desert stretching endlessly under the morning sun. Simple, natural, chaotic in its own beautiful way. Everything the Nari had rejected. Captain Lee found her there 20 minutes later. Having second thoughts? He asked quietly. Kim shook her head. Not about whether we should do this. Just wondering, what happens after? If we win, if we actually hurt them, what does that make us? Lee stood beside her, watching the wind create patterns in the sand below. They gave us no choice. They came to our home and attacked us. Not with weapons. No, Lee agreed. Something worse. They tried to break our spirit, make us hate ourselves. They stood in silence for another moment before returning to the war room. The countdown had begun. At exactly noon GMT, as the Nari began their daily broadcast, Operation Sunrise launched. Duhan's face appeared on screens worldwide, but this time something was different. The usual smug confidence seemed forced, the multi-toned voice slightly strained. Today we will discuss your species' inefficient use of resources, the alien began. Meanwhile, in the Gobi facility, technicians initiated the dawn sequence. The seemingly ordinary response signal, which Earth had been sending daily, now contained its hidden payload. As it streamed toward the Nari communication hubs, the team held their breath. For 70 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Duhan continued the lecture, displaying images of Earth's industrial centers alongside Nari efficient alternatives. Then, almost imperceptibly, the alien paused, blinked rapidly. The transmission flickered, just for a microsecond. They've received it, whispered a technician, watching data streams on her monitor. Their system is attempting to process the contradictions. On screens worldwide, Duhan seemed to struggle to maintain composure. Your coal plants, your nuclear facilities. The voice became disjointed, the image stuttering. Daybreak. Phase. Now, Captain Lee ordered. Across the solar system, 8 small ships emerged from hiding and accelerated toward the nearest Nari vessel, a massive communications hub orbiting Jupiter. As predicted, the Nari detected the approach. Immediately, on Earth screens, Duhan's image stabilized briefly. We detect your primitive vessels, the alien said, actual amusement in its voice. This attempt at aggression is noted. The Nari defenses easily locked onto the approaching ships. This was expected. The ships were decoys, meant to be noticed. What the Nari failed to detect were the specialized devices these ships carried. Not traditional weapons, but custom-built electromagnetic pulse generators, designed specifically to match the frequencies observed in Nari technology. As the aliens' defense systems destroyed the approaching vessels one by one, they triggered the very weapons they were trying to neutralize. 8 synchronized electromagnetic pulses bloomed in space, invisible to the human eye, but devastating to the Nari systems. In the Gobi facility, cheers erupted as data showed the pulses had deployed successfully. But the celebration was premature. Duhan's transmission continued, though now with visible distortion. Your attack is insufficient, the alien said, voice fluctuating unnaturally. Our systems are adapting. Kim watched in growing despair. Had they underestimated the Nari's ability to overcome chaos? Then she noticed something strange. The background behind Duhan was changing. The perfectly ordered Nari control room showed signs of confusion. Aliens rushed in seemingly random directions. Warning lights flashed. "It's working," she breathed. "Not on their communications first. On their central control systems." The Dawn virus had found its way into the Nari's integrated network. Unable to resolve the contradictions embedded in the code, their systems were attempting increasingly desperate processing solutions, consuming more and more resources. Meanwhile, the daybreak EMPs had disrupted the careful synchronization between ships and homeworld. On screens around the world, Duhan's composure finally broke. The alien's silver face contorted in what looked remarkably like fear. "Stop, your chaos, spreading through. Cannot contain." The transmission cut to static, then resumed from what appeared to be a different location. The new Nari spokesperson looked panicked. "Humans, cease transmission. You don't understand what you're..." Static again. In the war room, data poured in from observatories and deep space monitoring stations. The Nari ships were experiencing massive power fluctuations. More significantly, telescopes focused on their home system showed disturbing changes on the surface of their planets. "Their environmental control systems are failing," someone reported. "Temperature regulators, atmospheric processors, everything shutting down." Kim watched in horrified fascination as real-time imagery showed chaos spreading across the perfectly ordered alien worlds. Without natural systems to fall back on, the planets had no resilience. When the technology failed, there was nothing to maintain livable conditions. "Should we stop the transmission?" a technician asked quietly. "We could end the virus attack." Captain Lee looked to Kim, the question in his eyes clear. They had planned to disrupt the Nari, force them to withdraw, not to destroy them. Before Kim could answer, the main screen lit up with a new transmission. It was Dohan, but not the composed, mocking figure they had come to know. The alien looked injured, the silvery skin darkened in places, the large eyes clouded. "Humans," the alien said, its multiple-toned voice now just a single, weak sound. "You have succeeded beyond imagination. Our perfect system, unable to process your chaos." The alien's next words would haunt Kim forever. "Perhaps perfection was our mistake." The transmission ended. Operation Sunrise had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations and their worst fears. Smoke rose from the remnants of Nari technology scattered across Earth. Their communication relay stations, disguised for centuries as natural formations or integrated into human structures, now stood revealed and destroyed. It had been 3 weeks since Operation Sunrise, 3 weeks since the screens went dark, 3 weeks since humanity held its collective breath, waiting for retaliation that never came. Dr. Kim stood at the window of what had once been the underground bunker but now served as the headquarters for the newly formed Interstellar Monitoring Agency. Sunlight streamed in through recently installed skylights, a symbolic gesture to represent humanity's emergence from darkness. "The latest images are in," Captain Lee said, entering the room with a tablet. His uniform was new, bearing insignia that hadn't existed a month ago. "You should see this." Kim took the tablet and studied the astronomical data. High-powered telescopes around the world had been focused on the Nari home system since the operation. The images showed devastation beyond anything they had anticipated or intended. "The cascade effect was total," she said quietly. "Their worlds are burning." The perfect symmetry of the Nari planets had collapsed. Without functioning environmental systems, atmospheric conditions had rapidly deteriorated. Massive storms raged across once pristine surfaces. Fires consumed vast areas of the mechanical landscapes. It wasn't just damage, it was apocalypse. "We never meant for this," Kim whispered. Lee's face remained impassive, but his eyes revealed his own struggle. "We defended ourselves against an aggressor. We couldn't have known their systems were so fragile." But they had known, hadn't they? The entire operation had been based on exploiting that very fragility, the Nari's inability to handle chaos. They just hadn't anticipated the scale of collapse. The door opened again, and Professor Song entered, looking exhausted. She had been working non-stop analyzing the final transmissions from the Nari. "We've decoded more of their emergency broadcasts," she announced. "It's complicated. Their society is in ruins, but they're not extinct. About 30% of their population appears to have survived in deep underground facilities. These bunkers had isolated systems protected from the network collapse." "Survivors," Kim said, a small relief washing over her. "Can we communicate with them?" "We're trying, but there's something else you need to see." Professor Song took the tablet and pulled up a different file, a video. The timestamp showed it was recorded just hours before the collapse of the Nari communication system. It showed Dohan, looking disheveled, recording what appeared to be a private message. "This was directed specifically at us, at you, Doctor. Kim, actually. It was buried in their final data burst, encrypted differently than their other communications. Almost as if Duhan wanted to make sure we found it, but others didn't." She pressed play. The silver-skinned alien looked directly at the camera, the usual mockery gone from its large eyes. "Dr. Kim's son, if you receive this, then our systems have failed catastrophically. I record this knowing my actions constitute treason under Nari law." Duhan paused, looking over its shoulder as if afraid of being discovered. "What you must understand is that not all Nari supported the Earth Project. Some of us argued against the psychological warfare, against the ridicule campaign. We were overruled. Our society has not tolerated dissent for 10,000 years." The alien's multiple-toned voice softened. "Your chaotic, imperfect species has done what no external force has managed in millennia. You've broken the harmony, our ruling council's perfect control. For this, many Nari are secretly grateful." Kim felt her breath catch. "They wanted to be defeated?" "Not all of them," Professor Song clarified. "But it seems there was an underground resistance movement." Duhan continued. "Our society became trapped in perfection. We engineered away diversity, creativity, individuality, all in pursuit of efficiency. We mocked you for what we secretly envied, your freedom to be imperfect." The message ended with coordinates. The location of a Nari vessel hidden in the asteroid belt. "This ship contains our true history before the harmony. Perhaps your species will learn from our mistakes." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had not just defended itself, it had unwittingly participated in a Nari civil conflict, becoming the chaos that some of them apparently craved. 2 days later, the first emergency session of the United Nations since the Nari collapse convened in New York. The world's leaders gathered to decide humanity's next move. Dr. Kim had been asked to present the scientific assessment. Standing before representatives of every nation, she felt the weight of history. The chamber was utterly silent as she spoke. "The Nari civilization as it existed has collapsed," she began. "Their perfectly ordered worlds could not survive the disruption we introduced. But we now know that their society was not as unified as they presented. Some survivors remain, and based on decoded transmissions, they are rebuilding differently." Images appeared on the massive screen behind her. Nari emerging from underground shelters beginning to construct simpler, less technologically integrated structures. The new buildings lacked the perfect symmetry of their previous architecture. "They're adapting," she continued, "learning to live with imperfection, with diversity. And now we face a critical choice. Do we leave them to struggle alone, or do we offer assistance to a former enemy?" The debate that followed was heated. Some nations advocated for a hands-off approach, arguing that any contact risked exposing Earth to new threats. Others pushed for immediate humanitarian aid, seeing a moral obligation to help the survivors. "They tried to break us," the representative from Brazil argued. "Why should we help them?" "Because if we don't," countered the delegate from Ghana, "we become what they were, cold, calculating, without compassion." Outside the UN, public opinion was equally divided. Memorials had sprung up in cities worldwide, not celebrating victory, but acknowledging the sobering cost of survival. People left flowers, artwork, and handwritten notes expressing complex emotions: relief, guilt, hope, fear. Street artists painted murals depicting the before and after, Nari worlds in their mechanical perfection juxtaposed with the chaos of their collapse. One particularly moving piece in Tokyo showed human hands reaching across space toward silver alien hands, with the simple caption, "What now?" 3 months after Operation Sunrise, the decision was made. Earth would send a mission to the Nari home system, not for conquest but for contact. The ship would carry scientists, diplomats, and engineers offering assistance with rebuilding essential life support systems. Dr. Kim, despite her exhaustion and lingering doubts, volunteered immediately. "You don't have to go," Captain Lee told her as they watched the mission vessel under construction. "You've done enough." "That's why I have to go," she replied. "I helped cause this. I need to help fix it." The day before the mission launched, Kim visited a small park that had become a gathering place for people processing the events. A simple stone monument had been erected, bearing words that had circulated widely after Dohan's final transmission. "Perhaps perfection was our mistake." Someone had added underneath in smaller lettering, "And perhaps compassion is our strength." Kim traced the words with her fingers, thinking about the journey ahead. Humanity had survived, but not without cost, not just to the Nari, but to humanity's self-image. They had been forced to weaponize their own chaotic nature, turning their primitiveness into a strength. As she walked back toward the launch facility, she passed children playing an impromptu game they'd invented called Humans and Aliens. Unlike the warfare games of previous generations, this one seemed to involve both sides working together to build something. Perhaps that was the most important aftermath. Not the technological advances gained from studying Nari remains, not the new defensive systems being developed worldwide, but this shift in perspective. Humanity had faced its first interstellar challenge and emerged not just victorious but wrestling with profound questions about responsibility, difference, and coexistence. The universe, they now knew, contained both threats and possibilities. And in the end, what had saved them wasn't superior technology or military might. It was the very messiness the Nari had mocked. Their diversity, adaptability, and unpredictability. Their beautiful, essential human chaos.